Okay, we're gonna get going right on time. Thank you all for coming to this session. And before we get started, we want to learn a little bit about you. So just to get an idea of who's out there, how many landscape architects are in the room? Great. Civil engineers, planners, urban designers, architects, developers, facility managers. Anyone else that I forgot? Consultants, ecologists. Okay.
Public officials.
Okay. And how many are sites APs? Great. How many are interested in getting your sites AP? Wonderful. And how many lead APs? Okay. One more question. Two more. How many are very new to sites? Okay. And is anyone out there with a sites project? Great, great. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and I'm going to introduce myself, and then we're going to introduce the panel, and then we're going to get started with a short description of just some sites updates, but really spend most of the time with the conversation between the project team, HP, the client, as well as Stack Rock Group, the design team. So my name is Danielle Pieranunzi, and I am a Sites Program Specialist at GBCI. Prior to this role, which is very new, I just started this summer, I was the Sites Director at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, which is part of the University of Texas at Austin. And University of Texas at Austin was one of the 3 founding organizations for sites, along with the American Society of Landscape Architects. We have our Executive Director here from ASLA here, there she is. And the US Botanic Garden. And we spent 8 years developing and researching the Sustainable Sites Initiative program and put out the Sites V2 rating system that we'll talk about briefly. So I'm going to pass it over to Krisjan and to the rest of the team to introduce themselves.
My name is Krisjan Hiner. I'm one of the co-founders of Stack Rock Group Landscape Architecture, and we're here to talk about our HP Boise project. Does anybody here know about anything about this project? So the HP campus in Boise is currently it is the first site certified project in all of Idaho, and it is the first Sites V2 corporate campus certified in the entire world. So we're very excited to be here to talk to you guys about this project.
Mary Curtis with HP. I'm Global Head of Energy and Sustainability.
Steve Birch, I'm with HP as well, and I am a FM delivery manager, real estate organization for the West Coast.
And Will Howard, Stack Rock Group, Landscape Architecture. Krisjan and I are partners and kind of waded into the project together, and now we're here.
Okay, well, I'm going to be brief because they have a really great talk, and we want to have a conversation with you and make it very interactive for you to ask questions and really get to know this project and their process. So I'm going to start off by talking about why sites is important to the built environment and sustainability, but also to GBCI. The Sustainable Sites Initiative is a comprehensive land design and development rating system that is targeted toward new construction or major renovation of existing sites, and it's being used by public and private sectors around the world. And site certification is given to landscape, site infrastructure, any outdoor spaces that achieve high levels of environmental and social sustainability. So many of you know that GBCI administers the LEED certification and LEED professional credentialing offerings. But recognizing the need and urgency to address many different global and local issues and seek new opportunities, they've expanded beyond the building skin to look at various sectors and various programs. So for example, they're looking at the power energy sectors with PEER, they're digging deeper into zero energy and zero waste and maximizing resource efficiency with TRUE. And obviously with sites, we're looking at elevating the value of landscapes and improving that aspect in the development process with sites. So sites was originally modeled after LEED, yet of course expanding beyond the building skin. Sometimes there's projects with no buildings at all, there's nothing happening to the building for construction practices. But let's quickly talk about the sheer impact that LEED has had globally, because that is what we at GBCI would like to have with sites and have that same impact globally. So sites is fairly new, registration just opened in 2015. So less than 20 years old, LEED started out with one rating system and a few projects in the United States, and now is available in 167 countries and territories. And this translates to 6.24 billion square feet of certified space. And a community that includes over 200,000 LEED professionals around the world, some of you in this room. So like LEED, SITES is more than a rating system. It's building a community, a global community of committed professionals. It's implementing global goals at the project level, so using that rating system to translate those big goals, as well as facilitating the development of regional and local action. And here I just want to point out that recently Rhode Island adopted SITES. We're the first state in the nation to adopt SITES into public policy for their state projects. So that's really exciting news. Small but mighty state. Anyone from Rhode Island? Okay. Okay. So together we are driven to create a community that addresses all these qualities. Yet in order to make a society fully respond to this list and to make it safe and healthy and resilient and sustainable, we must go beyond the building skin. We also address these 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. We must go beyond the building skin to be truly sustainable. And this is really the premise of SITES, is to really address the site, the landscape, and think about it early on in the development process. So what are these spaces, these projects that we're talking about? These spaces range in scale, size, context. It's everything from the urban area to a rural area, any kind of climate all over the world. There are residential neighborhoods, there are city plazas and parks, there are schools, and all the spaces that we work and visit and enjoy. So take, for example, this project here, a commercial project in Missouri. This is on the top left, the top row, you'll see the building. The building is actually a LEED Platinum building. And after it was built, the client wasn't so happy with the landscape design, which is on the left, the before. And during this time, we had our SITES pilot program. This was back in 2010. And they wanted to test out the first version of the rating system. And this just really shows the dramatic impact that you can have when you use SITES, alone or in addition with LEED. It complements LEED, it's very well aligned with that. So you can see the dramatic impact. It's now not just providing one function of managing some stormwater runoff, it is now an actual amenity for the site employees. They come out here for lunch, for yoga, and it's also enhancing the wildlife habitat there. So that's a big premise of SITES. So how can we design our sites to be better informed by the landscape? So let's zoom out a bit. This image is taken in Arizona, not far from where I grew up actually. One of the reasons I got into sustainability. So this is not a split image. On the left, you'll see the Navajo Indian Reservation, and the right, you'll see a typical suburban development. And you can see here the dramatic impact that we've had on land. And this is what we're trying to show, is that we have a lot of impact in terms of air quality, resource consumption, public health, as well as social connection. So we want to really look at the natural systems to inform our development, and how can we just really close that gap so we're not creating things that are more destructive than improvements. So, and many of us have heard that more than half of the world's population now lives in urban areas, and that's only expected to rise. So this means more impervious surfaces, more air pollution, water pollution, and so on, and really less access and opportunity to be connected with nature. So how can we design our projects, any project we have, whether it's a green roof on a building downtown, or a city park, or commercial headquarters, how can we design that to reconnect people with nature, because we know there are so many benefits that we get from being outdoors. So this need is increasingly urgent, as we know, with recent extreme weather events, hurricanes, wildfires, and so on, that we need to really pay attention to land planning. Design and development is essential to fostering resiliency, mitigating climate change, protecting human health, and driving prosperity for all. So luckily, SITES embodies all of these goals and qualities. And more specifically, these 4 goals were used to inform the development of the rating system. I'll read them aloud because I'm not sure if you can read them too well. The first one is to transform the market through design, development, and maintenance practices. And what this really means is that if we want to change the outcome of our projects, if we want to elevate the value of landscapes, we really need to change the process for getting there. And that is what SITES does. The SITES rating systems front loads the design process. It requires an integrative design team. It thinks about maintenance in the design phase rather than as an afterthought. So there's a lot of things that are really shifted. And then secondly, we wanted to create regenerative systems and foster resiliency. And I think that's really embedded in our natural systems, is that if we start to align with natural cycles, natural systems, we can better protect ourselves from future extreme weather events, or really bounce back from any kind of impacts like that. And ensure future resource supply and mitigate climate change. We want to really preserve our resources like water. We don't want to always use potable water for things like lawns or elsewhere. We just really want to use gray water or just choose the right plant for the right place. And enhance human health and well-being. Obviously, this is really important, is that we want to reconnect people with nature. We want to strengthen the community that these projects are in. Because if we reconnect people with nature, they're more likely to become stewards and be protecting the environment for the future generations. So in addition to these 4 goals, ecosystem services was the foundational framework for the SITES rating system. So how many are familiar with that term? Okay. So ecosystem services is a term that was used to elevate the value of landscapes, basically, to describe all the qualities, all the goods and services that we get from healthy landscapes. So if you think about it, we get clean air, clean water, we have erosion control, flood control, spiritual benefits, and so on. And these are ecosystem services was what we use to design the rating system. So we know that not just only healthy ecosystems, but the built landscapes that we built can also provide these benefits. So the central message of the SITES program is that any project, whether it's the site of a corporate campus or city park or academic institution or residential yard, has that potential to protect and restore and enhance these ecosystem services. And thinking back about the population and how we're more and more in these cities, that we really need to think about any space that we have and try to really protect and restore these ecosystem services. So unlike buildings, sustainable landscapes appreciate in value over time rather than depreciate. So if you think about it, plants and trees grow, soils improve, habitat develops, and in turn people are nurtured by these environments. So I want to just take a quick look before we go on to our certified project here with HP and the design team to talk about some of the other certified projects, so you're aware of those. This is the University of Texas at El Paso, and they took, for their 100 years of service to this region, they wanted to really reinvent the campus and provide a site for the students, for the faculty. Prior to this was asphalt, this was parking lots and roads, and there were flooding issues, even with 9 inches of rain a year. And so they really wanted to reinvent this project. And what they did is they did a really in-depth water analysis beyond just the site boundary, which is really an artificial boundary. They went and looked at the mountains at the foothills that this project was sat under. And they noticed that the natural flows of the river, the arroyos, were covered. They're paved over. And this is what was causing the flooding issues. And it was really hiding the Chihuahuan desert that this project was in. They were using lawn and just scattered trees. It wasn't really reflecting the Chihuahuan desert. And so this project achieved SITES Silver and became the first project certified under the SITES V2 rating system. It's also considered one of the first and largest green infrastructure projects in the El Paso region. So there are a lot of benefits to cover with the time we have for this project. But again, the stormwater management improvements that they've made have now revealed. You can see all these right here, these linear rain gardens that are treating and infiltrating and slowing down the water. They're managing over the 95th percentile precipitation event, and then the rest is treated before it goes into the Rio Grande. So this university is among the top-rated campuses for upward mobility, which means that many of the students are the first in their family to attend university. So this project is also about social equity. So through this project, the university is helping its community to be more successful with life challenges and by providing these outdoor opportunities for social interaction, physical activity, and mental restoration. So spaces for mental restoration increased by 64%. These are some of the credits in the SITES rating system. And then with this, more than 1,800 seats now available for social interaction, where students, professors, and staff can connect with peers and experience the benefits of nature. And as noted by the university's Vice President for Business Affairs and Facilities Management, the benefits go beyond sustainable landscapes or the lowering of utility bills. It's about the benefits that the students are getting, especially important in the collegiate setting or any work setting. So one more project before we hand it over. So soon after the University of Texas at El Paso was the Chicago Navy Pier, which is one of the, I think, the most visited tourist attraction in Chicago, from what I heard. So for its bicentennial, the Chicago Navy Pier put out an international design competition to reimagine the pier landscape, which is not a typology we actually imagined when we first created the SITES rating system as a pier landscape. So this is the first phase of the project to achieve SITES Gold, and this included the entry to the pier, which is a park and a plaza, as well as the south dock, which is a long spine that goes along the pier. And just some benefits for the project. Before, the stormwater would just run off right into Lake Michigan. And this is really a marvel of landscape engineering, this project. They cut out large tree tanks that are now infiltrating and storing the stormwater runoff, most of it. And anything they can't store, they are treating before it goes into Lake Michigan. They're also using 100% of reclaimed water for their irrigation needs and water feature needs. They've also preserved 73% of their trees and other vegetation and soils, as well as used selected plants that are appropriate for the region. And what's exciting on the designer's point of view, James Corner was the designer for this project, very notable, and he notes that this is an important tool that kept our entire team accountable to a high standard of practice and resulted in unprecedented projects. So this is exciting because we can design projects and talk about all the things that we want to do, but SITES actually helps you get from the performance goals aspect, the integrated design team, the pre-design site assessment, and it really gets to things, provides that framework so the client gets what they pay for, essentially. So third-party verification is important because it ensures that transparency and validation. And without that assurance, projects might face market disadvantages. It also, for a public project, it might display this effort into really providing sustainable, resilient places for the community. And certification also is a prominent display of leadership to the site users, the employees, but also to the community. And this is this need and support of SITES is noted by the U.S. General Services Administration National Design Director gosh, I can't really read that at all. I'll have to read that for you. We're really thrilled to announce that they, in 2015, early on, they're one of the early adopters of LEED, adopted SITES for all the new capital construction projects. So this is on the federal level. All new capital construction projects are meeting SITE standards. And so I'll just read the quote since you can't really see it. Our incorporation of the site certification program provides an added focus on the quality of our site development, clear performance standards, and third-party verification, all of which help GSA meet its sustainability goals and ensure accountability in the actual performance of delivered projects, which is really wonderful. And so when I think about that 6.24 billion square feet of certified space of LEED, when I think about SITES and the trajectory that it will take, that could actually translate into protected and restored land, high performance landscapes. And so it really is an exciting point in time for SITES. And I'm really glad to pass it on to HP, our third certified project, our first commercial project in the world to be certified by the SITES V2 rating system. And feel free to ask questions and make it interactive as much as possible.
All right. Daniel, thank you. How's everybody? Good. Right on, good morning. So, like I said before, my name is Krisjan Hiner. I'm with Stackrock Group Landscape Architecture. We are a small landscape, kind of boutique landscape architecture firm based in Boise, Idaho. We have an office in Salt Lake City, and we're lucky enough to do projects all over the country, and are also fortunate enough to have an amazing client like HP. One of the great things about working with HP is they get sustainability. As you guys know, a lot of clients just don't quite get it. HP gets it like no one else. CEO Dion, at HP, sustainability starts at the top and permeates through every level of their organization. So we're lucky enough today to have our client HP here with us to kind of talk about the project. We're going to jump right into it, so we don't have a ton of time. Mary, if you wouldn't mind introducing the video. One of the great things about HP is they're good at media, and they made a really, really cool video about the project so that they can tell you more about it than we can.
Great, thank you. So we're here to tell you the story. Obviously, it's one of the best ones we have. We're excited about the project. We're especially excited about the leadership position that this puts us in. Since our company was founded in 1957, global citizenship has been key to the pillars of our company. And through this project, it's really evident in what you'll see in the video, but the boldness of the project, I think, really goes so far beyond a typical landscaping project. We operate in over 60 countries around the world. So this is the first of what we hope to be many projects going forward. We've learned a lot through this process. We were going to do the project before sites came into the picture, but it just aligned perfectly with our objectives and making sure that we can spread these best practices not only among our other campuses at HP, but really in the industry. And that's our main objective, is really to move the industry this direction. Turn over the video.
All right, thank you. So I think this is going to work.
At HP, sustainability is a powerful force
See it. I can see it.
helping us to
Here.
drive progress in our priorities and in our performance.
Is that the audio for it?
Can you drag it to the other screen? Oh.
At HP, sustainability is a powerful force for innovation.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we only have a limited amount of time, so it's only fitting that we spend all this time, monkeying with videos.
You just have to move your mouse to the other screen and click on the arrow.
In case you guys didn't guess, we are not professional speakers.
I don't know if that.
We actually had it all ready.
It works so
There
good.
you go. Just get your mouse over onto that screen.
Well, I realize that, but it's really, I only have one screen.
There you go.
It's hard to see.
I'll get the mouse over and hit play.
If not, we can tell you where to. Yeah.
There you go.
Ha!
There you go.
Look at us. Look at us. We're really doing
At
this thing.
HP, sustainability is a powerful force for innovation, helping us to drive progress in our priorities and in our performance. And that's in everything from how we design and deliver our core products and services, innovating new business models for growth, and in how we manage our operations and help those of our suppliers to be more energy and resource efficient.
HP, they're supposed to be innovators, and they're supposed to be progressive, and they got to be on the cutting edge, because if they don't, all this competition is going to whack them, right? So here they are, getting out front and looking at the future and saying, man, it's like, this is where we should go. And so to conserve the water, conserve the wildlife, have the beauty around you, I mean, that's all really good stuff.
The Boise landscaping project is a great example of how we best go about managing water. The project takes into consideration the current and future availability and potential scarcity of water, local ecosystems and habitats that are appropriate here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho.
All the materials here we had to source locally. The pipe, the seed, everything that went in here was as local as we could find it. Most of it didn't come from very far away from right where we're sitting right now. During the entire construction of this, there was not one trip to the dump. Everything stayed right here and everything was put back into the project.
The campus has been a different type of beautiful for so long. So initially it was kind of a jolt, thinking you're going to kill all of the grass on the site first and then it's going to be a 3-year project.
The United States government has certified this campus as extremely sustainable. This campus is the first site sustainable project in the state of Idaho and the first large corporate campus site certified in the United States.
Over 80% of HP employees regard this company as environmentally and socially responsible. Employees often see that in the environment around them, in the workplace around them. And what is it that our corporate real estate and workspace team and their partners do to make this site more efficient in water use, in energy use, etc.?
On the surface, yeah, it's a native landscaping project. But deeper than that, it's a leadership thing, by HP, and it's the future, and it's a model for what people can do. And when people see a place as big as this, and a company as big, as important as this, doing this stuff, why can't they do that in their backyard?
By having such an open house, literally, on this project, our team has been able to bring others who want to learn from these practices and apply them as well into their businesses and their communities.
Get a non-native plant, plant it. And it takes a lot of care. It starts wilting. You take a native plant, you water it, you plop it in the ground, and it is home.
And if everyone does a little, that's a lot.
That is a lot. So, I'm going to try to make this go away now.
No pressure.
You gotta pause it first.
Yeah. I have to look here. Okay, so while I'm finding this, Will and Steve, they're going to kind of set the stage, talk about the inception of the project, kind of the design and construction phases of it, and hopefully I will have some really good photos to show you.
So background on the project itself is about 200 acres. It's a campus that has, how many employees?
3,000.
Roughly 3,000 employees. And currently what they had was a campus that was designed and built in the early to mid 70s. So over the years, as we all know, as campuses were designed, they typically were big areas of lawn. We had massings of junipers that scattered throughout, the stuff that looked really good in the 70s and then never changed. So the employees, as we kind of started looking at it, and I'll let Steve kind of talk about how they got into it, but the whole thing was a big lawn that all they did was maintain. And we looked at it and kind of decided, well, why should we have that? So I'll kind of let Steve talk about how they started.
Yeah, so obviously, kind of the genesis of the project for me was, I do manage the campus, and you look at the costs of operating a site, and you're always looking for ways to optimize things, right? And so one thing that I was watching is the campus, we mow 31 weeks out of the year, it's maintained, right? The rest is winter. And what I was watching was there was an endless loop of mowers on campus, constantly mowing and manicuring it, right? Just to keep it down. Tons of water pouring on the site to keep it green, right? Idaho, Boise in the summer, we get 105, right? So lots of water. And so I just kind of was observing those things, and we have a 2-mile walking path, and I was watching people walk, and they would absolutely avoid walking on the grass. And it just seemed kind of weird that the only people walking on the grass were the landscapers mowing it, right? It seems sort of inefficient, and it wasn't terribly, interactive for people. They just walked past it. So, and then at the same time, I was looking at my peers in California who were dealing with, like in Roseville, California, they had to shut the water off. And their grass died because they had the same campus, same style, right? They put the same stuff everywhere. And so, it was kind of in the back of my head, and I went to a sustainability forum that the city of Boise put on, and they were talking about xeriscaping. And I went in and I was watching, and I thought xeriscaping was Arizona, right? It's cactus and rock. That's all I saw. That's what I had in my head, and I, was a little bit leery, but they were showing where they converted a median. They'd shut the water off on the median and converted it, and it was all native flowers. It was gorgeous. So it kind of came to my mind of, well, maybe there's a better way to do this, right? Maybe there's something here, because I simply didn't want to stop mowing. I didn't want to stop watering, because that's not good, right? That doesn't look good. That doesn't look professional, and it's not very nice for the employees. So that was kind of when I reached out to our GC, our general contractor that we use, and just said, hey, I don't even know where to start, but I have this crazy idea of, let's take 40 acres of grass out. Let's kill it. Let's put something in that's more appropriate. So that's how I reached out through the GC, who connected us with Stack Rock.
So we showed up on site that first day, and he's just like, we kind of drove out to, and the surrounding, the whole site, the 40 acres that he's talking about is along the walking path, and really there's sports fields and everything else, but we just kind of pulled up, got out and stood out there, and I'm like, so what do you want to do? And he's like, can we just get rid of it? So it's like, yeah, why not? But at the same time, we were familiar with sites from years before, and then we had recently given some presentations for our local USGBC chapter about it. And so as we started talking about, hey, why not get rid of this lawn that's unusable? We started seeing the filter that we could use, which was sites. And so we brought it up to Steve, and we're like, well, it kind of fits perfect if we look at all of this and do it through the process that they've aligned for us. And so as we kind of developed what we were gonna do and looked at it and started, so the whole thing was a huge team collaboration. And like, I can't say more about HP, their team, the teams that the city of Boise, like we had, in the beginning phases of it, we had probably 45 different people from different areas of expertise in one meeting telling us that we were either crazy or, yeah, this will work. And so just going into it with these guys, the whole process kind of evolved through using the sites as a filter, but in the end, I think it turned out really successful for us, because in 1 year, we ended up going from what is here before to after in just 12 months. So the whole process, everything about it, yeah, it just came together, and I think sites is one of the huge reasons that it worked out, so.
So here is a site plan. Why don't you guys kind of walk everybody through kind of what's where and kind of the thinking on the front end of how we attack this thing?
So through the design process with everybody, there's multiple groups, like I was mentioning, at HP that were involved. We had the Beekeepers Club, we have the Sustainability Group, we have the soccer players, cricket players. I mean, there are tons of people that wanted to make sure that their input was heard, so we invited everybody. Steve, these guys were great about getting everybody there. And so in the end, we didn't take out all of the active space. We did leave some soccer fields, some sports fields. We do still have some water, but for the most part, we reduced everything down by about 80% of what was there. And really, that was just taking out the unused space. So campus, they actually farm on the campus. It's been there since they established it. You'll see the 2 agricultural farmlands on it. The walking path that we're talking about kind of encircles the whole thing. All the stormwater on the site is already contained. They pipe it to these kind of holding ponds that are there, which is also the irrigation water in the canal. So a lot of it really aligned with where sites was at. But then we also didn't get some of the points because we weren't able to affect some of that. We weren't able to change how the stormwater stayed. But in the end, it all kind of, that we win some, you lose some, but it worked out well. So.
Yeah. And the primary focus that we took on the first phase was I wanted the biggest bang. I wanted to get it, I wanted it to be very bold and visible. So we took the exterior loop around the site. So Chinden Boulevard in Boise is a very highly traveled road, right? And so I wanted this to be visible on Chinden, which was both good and bad. But we wanted it to be visible. We wanted it to focus on that walking path, because that's where people are. So there's spaces up against the buildings that we haven't touched yet. We hope to get to those in future phases, but what we wanted to do was really get it established, show people. And you take a different approach up against the buildings than you may take out there, right? But I wanted to really bring the message home with what we were doing.
So we can't really read any of that. Can you just describe what looks like gray and white stripes? What is all that?
That is parking. That's existing parking.
How many people are on the site every day?
With our tenants and stuff, there's about 4,500 people. The site was built up originally for manufacturing, so it's all central campus. There's 8 buildings here, so I'm just gonna step off. So these are all the buildings, right? And they're all centrally powered and and all that stuff. It's a traditional campus structure. And so all that parking on the exterior is, you know, old parking that's been there forever, you know, since we built the buildings and such. Does that help?
And the gold areas where you're agricultural?
Yeah, so these are agriculture. So we've got, actually it's our landscaper. They do hay and alfalfa.
So
They
what
lease
are
the.
the areas that all of the massive lawn was removed?
Sure. So basically the range. So we went here all the way around the site. So this is a walking path. I see that it's kind of hard to read, but there is a walking path that goes all the way, goes around the pond, goes along, goes out there. We've got a park course out there as well. It's 2 miles. It's actually a little more. Yes.
Quick question. Are you going to try to master plan that old parking into pervious surfaces later on to try to get some more?
I mean, I don't know. That would be a very big project, expensive project.
How old is that?
The parking?
Yeah.
I mean, it all ranges from the newest is probably in the mid 90s. So, and the oldest, I mean, the campus construction started in, I think, 74, 75, and we started occupying in 76.
Yeah, because if you're trying to get more stormwater management, that would be
It would be.
And that was one of the the interesting challenges of this project, which for sites originally was set up for new developments and new projects, and where this was an existing campus that was built started in the 70s, and so that was one of the things that we worked really close with the USGBC on, is how to navigate this thing using the existing framework, but how do we really make this work for sites? And USGBC was fantastic, helping us figure all that stuff out. So if you guys do have a project that seemingly, maybe on the onset of it doesn't really look like it might fit sites, call them. I mean, they're great to work with, and we'll do everything we can to really help you navigate that.
And just to add to that, so sites is geared toward new construction projects, but also these kind of landscape renovations. So you work with what your scope is. So this is a different kind of scope maybe than some other projects that you might see that are really reinventing the whole site itself. But there's still lots of opportunities and lots of impact that this project has done with what they can. So.
Please.
Does this process impact how the agricultural areas are managed, like pesticides?
Yes. Yeah. So we asked them to not use pesticides, and they've followed through. It's our landscaper that leases that ground. We've had lots of conversations with them. It did reduce their yield, so they are leasing it from us. So that was a challenge that we had to work through with them. We're asking them to do something that's going to impact their use of our land. So and to their credit, they were absolutely willing to work with us on this and work through this. And one of the interesting things also, I know it wasn't specifically asked, but like our landscape developer, our landscaper, very old school. This was his baby. He's been associated with the site for 20 years. And so when we approached him and I told him I was going to kill all his grass, he was in the meeting. He was visibly upset. This was upsetting to him.
This is a grown man crying. Right?
This was, and that's no joke. It's not theatrics. He really was. There were tears in his eyes when I was talking to him because this was so scary to him. And what he was worried about as well was what this could do to his business, because everybody in town knows he maintains that site. So we had to really kind of walk through and work with him on that to help him. I offered, anything I could do to help. These guys did the same. And we had to kind of bring him along, which was pretty interesting, and say, Tal, I know this is how you've done business forever, but, we don't have that much water. We get 12 inches a year, and you're putting 31 on top of that, 31 inches a year to keep my grass green. That's just crazy. You can't do that. So it was interesting. That was part of this collaborative approach, was everybody leaned in to help and educate.
In the back, please.
Yeah, can you just orient us within the city of Boise? Let us know if you are connected to the city bike path and if a goal was
So the bike paths are so there's bus stops, there's bike paths, there are the transit all runs right through here. The city of Boise.
The bike path along the river in the city?
So the Greenbelt is actually about a mile away, but you can get there from here. There's access to
There's
it.
pretty good connection, yeah.
Yeah, Boise's a very bike-friendly town, and there's a lot of side bike paths and stuff that will connect you to the Greenbelt. And this is actually up on a bluff above the river, roughly a half mile away, probably.
Just right here, please.
Can I ask, do you know about how much water it saves when you got rid of the grass?
Yes, just wait.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we get too far into the kind of the nuts and bolts, let's talk a little bit about kind of the design phase of the process. We'll maybe kind of set the stage on how tell everybody how we sort of calculate the ROI on the beginning, and really helps let HP know if this is a feasible thing to even take on.
Yeah, so in the beginning, they asked us, well, when we said, yeah, let's do it, we were all gung-ho and high-fiving, and then we're like, oh, how do we figure this out? Somebody's got to pay for it. So we went through and we took all the records and maintenance records, and we found all the information we could about what the site was actually using. So we went in and we calculated water, costs of mowing, costs of maintenance, leaf cleanup, winter, stormwater, everything that we could find, and we kind of threw it all into a pot, pulled it out, and realized, hey, there's actually going to be some substantial savings in this project if we because once we take out the lawn, we're going to reduce maintenance, we're going to reduce the fertilizer, we're going to create something that's actually easier to use. So we were planning on, and what we planned on doing is pulling out, instead of watering 1 inch a week, as he had said, for 32 weeks, with the rangeland ecologist that we worked with, they do this in fire restoration all over our state. Our state has large desert areas that burn every year. And so they'll come in and they'll recommend a seed that goes back in with the soil types and all of that fun stuff. They'll plant it and they'll get a 30% success rate. Well, we had irrigation, so we can still use, if we add 4 inches of water on top of the normal 12 that we get, then we can actually grow in, and that's why you see some of the pictures and the success that I was talking about earlier. We actually get a way higher success rate because we can give it that jump that it needs every year and then cut it back if we don't need the water at all. So to your question, we actually reduced the water by about 80% for the site just by messing with the 40 acres that we did. So, and we have some different stats and stuff that'll go through that. But then the design process, I can't say more about the communication. Like, we learned so much through this process about trying to communicate to everybody, and there's no way we're ever gonna make it out of there. But in those initial meetings, like, there were people that were completely telling us we were crazy. And then there was other people that were like, this is gonna work, you gotta do this. But what it was that everybody thought we were just killing the grass, which the first days that we killed the grass, like, our community, Boise's a pretty small area. So HP, they've been a leader in the community for a long time. And as soon as we killed the grass in a 3-day period, it went from bright green and mowed to completely dead. And the whole campus, everybody, the neighbors, the news, we had news stations coming to interview us, and we're like, wait, whoa. They're like, what did you guys do?
Reddit lit up with statements about HP's going out of business and all this stuff.
Yeah, and so we had to really get ahead of that, and working with a large corporation, sometimes getting that information can be a little bit of a challenge. So we had to find different routes and different avenues to really let people know that, hey, this is gonna be okay. It's a 3-year process, that's what we told everybody. It's gonna take us 3 years to make this look good, because really, we really didn't 100% know. We have professionals that have done this in different areas around the world, really, but nobody's ever done it to a corporate campus. So we're trying to explain, yeah, I promise it's coming, but there was a lot of anxiety there on our part, because, man, what do we do?
And no construction project, be it building or landscape, looks the way it's supposed to look the first day. It's a process. You don't build a building and it looks awesome after the first week. So it was a lot of education to a lot of people, and we took phone calls, and we ended up because we were proud of the project, we put a sign, one of our project signs out there, which was twofold. We want people to know that we were doing it, and we also wanted people to stop calling Steve and start calling us because he was inundated with phone calls about why are you killing all the trees, and which we did none of. But yeah, so there was just a lot of questions, and yeah, it was that communication that was really, really tough.
You find you have a lot of owners that you didn't know about, right? Because you're in a community, so everybody feels like they own that campus. They had an uncle that worked there 20 years ago, or an aunt that still works there, and so there's a ton of owners that you just can't ever imagine.
how did you kill the grass that quickly? I mean, it wasn't just.
We had to use spray. We had to spray it. We did go through, so as part of the sites process, there are strict guidelines on how you can and can't do things. So, and that was, with lawn in our area, if you stop watering it, it takes 2 to 3 years for it to finally die off. So there's no way we could do that. We would lose all the trees. It would just be, I mean, it would be a catastrophe for us. So we worked with the professionals that told us, hey, this is how you should do it. This is where you should do it. We got all the documentation. We made sure they were all certified, everything. And then the general contractor. So another thing that is really helpful with this project was the way that we did it. The general contractor that these guys use on site was awesome. He helped organize, manage all the paperwork, manage everything, because he was in from day one and knew exactly what the goals were and how we were going to get there. He was in all the sites meetings. He was with all the stuff. So if there was ever a question or if anybody on site ever did anything different, he'd be like, no, you can't use that machine because it's not certified. You have to use it this way. And so, it was a process, but yeah, we ended up spraying it and it was a shock.
Spraying with what?
Roundup. Yeah, I know.
We all pushed back, all of us pushed back on that because it was not preferential.
And we made sure it was on a day when nobody was there and we had everything kind of contained. And it was, there was really no other way according to the professionals that we were working with, so.
Yeah, you'll hear some photos, kind of the construction phase of the process. What in the top left there, what is now, looks like a farm. Was like a golf course, just a few short days before that.
Test garden.
Yeah, the test garden. A big part of the project was at HP was really getting the employees on board with what was going to happen. So, Steve can talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we wanted to show people what it would look like, what the plants are going to look like, because they can't see them. You can do pictures, but pictures just don't do it, right? And so we did a test garden in a bed that we have out off of our cafe, and we actually had employees come out, and I'm out there. But we had employees out there to help dig them in, plant them. And what's really fun is like the mature plants that you see there, the BLM, I forget her, Holly actually took those out of her own yard and brought them in. That's how much she believed in the project and wanted it to be successful. So she literally dug buckets out and she was out helping us with some of this. So it just kind of shows that community effort of everybody leaning in to help and make sure it was successful. And it did alleviate people to see what we were, what we're talking about. And then you had something you could physically point to and talk about. Go out, someone's angry, you can go out and meet them there and show them. So.
We did a fairly substantial piece of the parking lot reconstruction too. There was a bunch of cherry trees that died a few winters ago and had never been replaced.
Yeah.
So we, as part of that, what we had to do is we had to work with some local plant growers. And so the reason that we got the plants out of her yard is because the plants that we were getting, because they're all native plants that we had to have grown, were plugs. So to show the employees, hey, this is what we're gonna do without really showing them any substantial size wouldn't make a very good impact. They're gonna be like, yeah, you planted a weed, what are you doing? So
and a small weed at that.
Yeah.
Can you explain the two images on the right?
So the two images on the right are, so during the construction, we had a plan of how to do this according to what people had said, but we had to adapt. So in the beginning, what was happening was we were going in and we were actually picking up all of that sod, taking it off, and they have on-site compost already, but what it ended up being was mountains of fluff that we were hauling off. So through the process, we ended up going in and
not hauling off, we were hauling to the compost pile.
Yeah, everything stayed on site. Yes. We never took one load to the dump. It all went to this compost area. So, but through that process, we realized this is going to take us 6 years if we do this way. So what we ended up doing is we ended up scarifying just the top of the dead sod and using that as the seed bed. And it actually worked really well. And we were more successful in those areas because we didn't get the weed growth. What happens in our area when we water dry ground is we have weeds, and we have tons of weeds. And so that's one of the reasons that we did only stay with the grasses in the beginning, is because if we put in all the flowers and stuff, we were afraid we wouldn't be able to control it and be able to get the broadleaves out of it. And it's a process. The maintenance guys are really still working at it, but We just got the first monitoring report for the first year, and like the success rate's pretty incredible. I think we have 97% coverage. I don't know if we have
97% coverage.
1%.
Only 1% invasive weed.
Yeah.
The 5 was what they expected us to be below, and we were at 1. 97% coverage. Diversity of plants. This was a cool one. Was sorry if I'm jumping ahead, diversity of plants was a cool one. So we planted 7 different varieties, but when they did their assessment, they found 15. So we went from a monoculture, maybe 2. Rye bluegrass, you might have 2, right? Literally from 2 to 15 in a year. And a bunch of those are just simply happy accidents, right, that came in.
So these are some pictures of, this is out along Chinden itself. It's a 5-lane road that runs kind of east-west through our area. And excuse me, the right side there is the walking path now versus you saw some of the pictures of the maintained lawn that it was before. We did keep areas, like I was saying, like the soccer fields, the sports fields, because that was very important to the users. We also have different weightlifting stations that are in this area that along the path. So there's still a lot of places for people to interact and use it. But I mean, you can just see the difference in like the feedback that these guys get is incredible. Like in the beginning, it was, we're coming after you guys with a pitchfork. And then towards the middle of it, they started kind of being like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And so it's kind of a cool thing to see.
Please. You guys keep bringing up maintenance. Could you talk about your maintenance staff and how you had to maybe retrain them? Or did you have to let people go or hire more people or retrain?
So our lands, so it's all outsourced. We have an outsourced landscape provider. And to my understanding, he did have to retool a little bit, some of his staff. He had to retrain, and we're still working with him. So if you go back to that slide, let me show you something that's kind of interesting on that one. So, we're trying to work with him. He's got mowers that only do certain things, and he's got equipment that will only do certain, and he's only done it one way. And so it's a learning process, and this is an example, right? So Chinden Road is right here, the sidewalk. We had to have him come in and cut just a little bit because the grass, the tall grass, was starting to lay down on the sidewalk, and that's not safe. So, we had to, work with him because he's like, well, I'm just gonna mow the whole thing. No, you're not. No, you're gonna go in, I want you to go in a foot. Well, I can't do that. I can only do 3 feet. So it was kind of this talking and, working with them. And, can't you get out there with the weed eater? It won't take that long. Just take a string trimmer and just do it. No. So it was very, a lot of discussions and education. And, it's natural. It's good. It's actually was kind of fun to kind of walk through and work with them on that. Because you're seeing them change, And I had discussions with them as well about, the retooling and, why can't you sell this in the valley, right? It's lower costs, operating costs. We went from, so the return on this was roughly 2 years payback. And the absolute majority of that is in mowing. That's really where we got it. So, you asked about how much water we saved earlier. 33 Olympic pools worth of water. We had to put it in something that people would see and understand. Gallons or what is it? Meters? Or there's some, Nobody understands what that was, right? So when you tell them, and when I had people that would get angry with me, I'm like, can you imagine dumping 33 gallons or 33 Olympic pools? That's more than 1 a week. Just dumping it. For what? When we don't need to. So, that was the visual that really got through and broke. You could see people go, oh, okay, well, I kind of get that, right? And then, the emissions reduction, that's all, think about all the mowers, right? Like I said, literally, they were mowing nonstop, right? You go over 40 acres and the crew is just essentially cycling through.
Get done on one side and start again on the other.
Yeah. So now, we're trying to figure it out. We figured about 2 mowings worth, is what we would be paying versus the 32. And the payback is an interesting one because we actually didn't calculate water savings. And the reason we didn't is we live in an area with irrigation. And so I have water rights, they're with my site, I have to pay for it whether I use it or not. So I don't use it, it just passes down the line. Which is also an interesting one. You have to take into account where we are, we're at the end of the line, so it's not a problem when we pass it down. So, you know, I pay for the water, it's not very much, and that's part of the problem. It's extremely inexpensive. I just don't use it.
Is there a plan to introduce the wildflowers and stuff, these other species that you didn't put in at first?
Yeah, and so we were, and again, that was kind of the succession of it. We didn't know if it was gonna be 1 to 5 years, really, because we wanted to get that stuff. So the plan was at year 3, but we're thinking about doing it now because of where we're at. Like, we have the weeds under, I mean, there's some areas that need some work, but for the most part, the weeds are under control and we can actually do that. The great part about these guys, is you saw some of the pictures, is they do team building exercises all the time. So they'll have different teams from within that'll actually plant and do a lot of that work. So over time, we'll just start introducing different wildflowers that are native into that landscape in different areas, different shrubs, different stuff for the birds, for wildlife. We've had botanists and ecologists and everybody looking at it. So I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see what actually comes back into it.
So we're getting really close to the end of time. I mean, we could sit here and talk all day long about this, which we would absolutely love to do. I don't know if everybody plans different sessions they're going to go to, but when we're done, we'll hang out in the room with the lettuce, or we'll go outside and we'll answer questions and talk about this the rest of the day if everybody wants to. But before we go, Steve, if you could real quick, just kind of talk about the triple bottom line.
Yeah, so obviously we have to look at the costs. That's a ROI, we have to do that. It's a business. At the end of the day, we have to do that. So we did, but the big piece also is HP is very conscious of the environment. And that's why with the water reduction, we were looking at water reduction opportunities. And then the people, you know, we want our people to be able to go out and interact with the site and have something. And now I've had employees come up to me and say things such as, I kind of forgot where I was. You know, I went out for a walk and I, you know, got lost. And that's what we wanted to hear. That's the kind of feedback we were hoping for. Maybe I didn't say that the best, but you get my point.
For coming to this session. There will be, if you have more questions, you can stay after, or at the USGBC booth, there'll be somebody with sites expertise there, or go to sites@gbci.org. And there's lots of resources on the sustainablesites.org website if you're interested as well. So thanks for coming.